All right, hello everyone. I warmly welcome all of you to our Theology Talk special event tonight. Our program tonight is very special for two reasons. The first reason is because our, our topic is very special. We have a very special topic tonight. And the second reason is because we have two special guests from America. So I'm going to introduce our special topic myself, and I'm going to also explain the reason why we chose this topic for our discussion tonight. But I'm going to let our two special guests to introduce themselves to us. So our topic for tonight is, why is church attendance declining in the Western country? Why is church attendance dropping down in the Western country? That is our topic. And we chose this topic for our discussion tonight because we want to know why churches are being closed in the Western countries. And we also want to know why Christians are stopping attending churches there in the Western country. As the saying goes, wise people learn from others' mistake. I'll repeat it. Wise people learn from others' mistake. So it is my hope and sincere desire that our Chin Christians learn from the mistake of Christians in the Western country so that we can avoid decline in church attendance and churches being closed in and among the Chin people. So that is our main focus and main reason for choosing this topic for our discussion tonight. So just before we go ahead with our main discussions, I'm going to invite our special guests to introduce themselves to us. I think, Uncle Tom, you can start.
Okay, my name is Tom Nelson, and I live in the state of Kansas in a town called Lindsborg. I grew up on a farm, and so I have that kind of background. And after I graduated from college and graduate school, I became a Lutheran missionary, and I was in Japan for about 12 years. And so Japan is like my home. I speak Japanese. And then also, I lived in Europe, in Slovakia for 3 years. And then I worked in Malaysia for a year, teaching English in all of those places. And when I came back home, then I've done some other work around and teaching. But anyway, 2 years ago, I met my first Chin person. He was making sushi at our supermarket, and I didn't know anything about Chin people. And when I started talking with him, and he started talking about his Baptist church, I became very interested. And another reason I'm so interested in the Chin people is because the missionaries like Laura Carson and Dr. East and Dr. Johnson, Dr. Nelson, those people came from our area in the United States. And so I've studied about them, and I've studied about Chin people. And I'm not an expert at all, but I have many, many friends. And so now I'm doing full-time teaching on Zoom and teaching many people around the world, many Chin people around the world. And also, I hope that many Chin people will come and visit me now in Kansas, and I will take them to see all of the places that are connected with Chin history. So that's my introduction.
That is amazing. This is amazing. Thank you so much. And Reverend Peterson, you can continue.
Okay. Well, my name is Dallas Peterson. I was a pastor in the United Methodist Church for 20 years. I'm a second career pastor. In my previous work, I call it my former life, I worked in the printing industry. We manufactured business forms and labels, but I had such a strong calling to do God's work that I was in my 40s, and God called me to become a pastor. And so I started out. I also, as Tom, I live in Kansas. I started out in southeast Kansas, and I moved to Lindsborg about 5 years ago. And I was a pastor at the Lindsborg Trinity United Methodist Church for 4 years, and I retired last year. But I continue to preach as a pulpit supply. I go to different churches and I preach at different churches. So, and Tom, when he became friends with his teen friend that worked at a grocery store making sushi, why Tom talked to me about it and to others about it, and I've just been interested ever since. And we meet at least once a week. We drink coffee and we discuss theology. We talk about what's going on in your country. So I have interest in it in that way, and would like to help out if I can. And so I agreed to be on this Zoom call today. That's pretty much it. I went to St. Paul School of Theology in Kansas City and was licensed as a pastor after having done that. Okay, I guess that's about it for now, anyway.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's so interesting to know that two of you have been walking across the globe. You were everywhere, so I think you are perfectly qualified to give input and informations about the topic that we're going to discuss tonight. I'm very happy to have you two in our theology talk tonight. And we have been leading this theology talk since 2022. And we have been inviting special guests from among our Chin people. Some of the renowned theologians from our Chin people have already shared with us in this theology talk platform. And I think this is the first time that we have pure American English speaking people in our platform, and I'm very happy about that. And I hope we'll be encouraged through your conversation tonight. All right. So according to Lifeway research, approximately 4,500 Protestant churches were closed in the US alone in 2019. And according to Gallup's report, just 3 in 10 US adults regularly attend church services. So if that two reports are true and accurate, then the situations of Christians in the US must be dead serious. So my first question is to Uncle Tom. And are these two reports correct and accurate? And if this is correct and accurate, then why that happened so? So I think that is very much relevant to our discussion tonight. So I want you to answer me that question and also give us a highlight of the areas that we are going to cover up in our conversation tonight. Thank you so much. This is your time.
Okay, Pastor Peterson and I talk regularly about this topic, about what has happened. And I sent you a picture of a book that is called The Religion's Sudden Decline. Do you have that available?
Yes, yes, I have.
I haven't finished reading it, but I agree with everything that I have read so far. This is something that we are living through right now, and it's making us feel very uncomfortable. A lot of people say, well, this is connected with the COVID pandemic, but it's not. It's something that probably started about in 2007 and is continuing on growing and growing. And so I would say that from what I have read, that these are very accurate data points. And so it's confusing for us. I have many friends who say, I have 3 children. I have 6 children, and none of them go to church now. We raised them in the church and gave them Sunday school training and all of that. But suddenly they just have stopped going to church, except maybe on Christmas or Easter or sometime like that. Otherwise, they don't want to be involved in church activities at all. And so, in many ways, it's a mystery to us also. Okay. And then what we're talking about, you said the highlights of the thing of what we're talking about today. Secularization, is it economic? Does it have anything to do with the unbiblical teachings? And then how about church leadership? Ineffective church leadership. And then finally, I'm going to talk about that what I see is hope for the situation. Whether it is true or not, I'm not quite sure, but this is what I believe these days. So that's the summary of what we're going to be speaking about tonight.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your quick answers and also for giving us the highlights of areas that we're going to cover up tonight. And as for our first question, I would like to ask Reverend Peterson first. What are the ecclesiastical reason for the decline of church attendance in the Western country, particularly in the U.S.? To put it in another way, does the church decline? Does the decline of church attendance has anything to do with the church mistakes? So I think that is what I call ecclesiastical reasons. So can you please tell us in great details about that?
Well, as far as the ecclesiastical reasonings for it, I don't know that the church itself is really the reason for a drop off in attendance, and we have a lot fewer that attend church in the United States than ever before. This I remember when I first started hearing about a decline in attendance. I was hearing about the European churches, how they'd have these huge cathedrals and there'd only be a few people worshiping there. People had just quit going, and then we started really noticing it here. Tom said like around 2007. Yes, that's true, and Tom and I have talked about that a lot. Why is this happening? And I don't think it has, and I could be wrong, but I don't think it has anything to do necessarily with the church. It is the values of people that have changed, and we're seeing here in America today what happened in Europe years ago. Fewer and fewer people attending for whatever reason. The book that Tom talked about, Religion's Sudden Decline, it talks about what it calls the Nordicization of the church, and that's speaking of the Nordic countries, Norway, Sweden, Finland, and also Denmark is included in that. That kind of led the way on this decline. They just stopped going to church, and we're seeing it here in America today in many places around the world. People have so many options in our country, and they choose other options. Sunday morning is sports. Well, people take their children to soccer or football or whatever instead of going to church. That's just one thing. So, there are a lot of reasons, I guess. I don't think they're good reasons. It breaks my heart, but those things are happening in America today, and I'm looking forward to what Tom has to talk about, the hope that we have. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. And Uncle Tom, do you want to add something on that? Ecclesiastical reasons for declines in church attendance?
I don't think I want to talk about the ecclesiastic point of view, but
Okay.
maybe we can move to the idea of secularization.
Okay.
I think that is the main thing that I see, is that these days people don't want to have a community. In the older times, people were in organizations, they were in clubs, they did things together. And suddenly, people don't like that idea anymore. And so people are leaving all kinds of organizations. Part of it, too, is that people are on their phones all the time. And so that is how we communicate. We don't have a need to look face to face with each other. Our best friends are on our phones. And that is what our whole life is. And so that's a very, very big part. And we're starting to realize that, especially with young people, they need to have time away from their phones. They need to experience life. But it seems that we have lost a sense of trust with each other. And we have lost the feeling that we should be together in a community. And so there are a lot of people who say, I don't like the idea of people in authority telling me what to do. And I can decide for myself. And so a church that is saying, you have to do this and you have to live this way and you have to come to church regularly, you have to follow these kinds of guidelines. People say, forget it. I don't care about that. And so that's one of the things that definitely we're facing. So I'm sure that Pastor Peterson can tell more of his ideas about that.
Sure. Please, Reverend Peterson, you can continue with that.
Okay. Well, the secularization of America, of I guess what you might call high cultural countries is that. I mean, people are going away from being in groups, being in clubs, being in organizations, and they are they're on their phones. I mean, they're on their phones all the time, as Tom was saying. So I think that is a big part of it. Yes, and we have. As I talked about a little bit earlier, so many different options. People will, they'll go to a sporting event before they will go to church. They will, they and they've kind of lost that need to have religion in their lives, to have faith in their lives. Their religion might be going to that sporting event. It might be some other things that they go to and they enjoy with other people, but at the same time they're not really being with other people. They're not. It's not a thing where they go to worship as we do in church, but they're doing other things that they are interested in. So it's happening more and more. Tom mentioned earlier that COVID really didn't have anything to do with it, and I disagree in a way. I think COVID did have something to do with it because the numbers really dropped off after that. But I think it just exacerbated what was going to happen anyway. It just sped it up. So we did have that. Some churches have come back from it well. Other churches have not. So in my opinion, it kind of gave people an excuse not to have to get up on Sunday morning and go attend their church, and that's part of what happened. But whatever the case might be, why we're facing a crisis in our country, and we need to have some hope laid out before us.
That is amazing, and as you just said, the pleasure and the joy and the vocation and the popularity that they are seeing and having outside of the church is so much more attractive than what they see and have in the church. Inside the church, there are commands of do this and do that, do that, but outside is full of freedom and full of joy and full of pleasure. So I think you put the church and outside in comparison, and the people of our generation choose outside pleasure rather than inside pressure. Church inside the church is actually pressure, not pleasure. Outside is pleasure. So people go after pleasure than going after pressure in the church. That is what you pointed out, I think. So my next question in that regard is, why don't we make the church more attractive for the younger generations? Is that because our churches are not attractive enough? Can we do our churches more attractive so that those people also want to come?
Okay, who are you asking first?
I think Uncle Tom, you can answer that.
Okay, there are some churches that are non-denominational churches. It seems like that many people in the United States don't like the idea of denominations now. They don't want to be a Baptist. They don't want to be a Methodist. They don't want to be a Lutheran, etc. They want to go to non-denominational churches. And there are some of the big churches that have very attractive services with great music and exciting speaking and, geared toward young people. And but even those churches now are starting to see a decline. It's not the fast decline as in some of these older churches, but I think that Pastor Peterson can talk very much about what a typical church looks like these days, because he goes around and visits all of these churches,
Yeah.
and it's almost always the same thing, the old people. But I wanted to say one more thing that we hear all the time is that people will say, I am not religious, I'm spiritual. It seems to be that we hear that everywhere. People say that. I don't need to go to a church because I have a spirituality inside of me. And they think about a higher power, but is that a Christian God that they imagine? Or they know that there is spiritual energy in the universe. That's kind of what they believe. And so this gets to be, we hear this so often, is that I don't need a structure of a church. I can be spiritual on my own and have a relationship with someone in the universe, right? Okay, then maybe Pastor Peterson can tell more of a
Yeah.
theological point of view of that.
Exactly, please.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's one of the things that churches today, a lot of churches, even our little Methodist church in Lindsborg, have tried to do in the past, is to have the music, have the music that will attract younger people. The only problem is that the music that is provided by older people. And a lot of times young people don't want to see that, right? So that is the problem, though, especially smaller churches. In America today, a majority of the churches have 50 in attendance or less.
Mm.
And you just have so many people that would be able to entertain in a spiritual way. So we just don't have the people that we need to have to um, have a venue that is attractive to young people. That's one of the things. Another thing is, well, you can play contemporary music. You can play tunes that young people might want to listen to and hear, but they're in the outside world and out of the church. Why, there's all kinds of music that they love anyway. So, why come to church to listen to contemporary music? It's just one of those things. And then I think the large churches have that venue. They're able to do that. I think of the largest United Methodist church in the world is in Kansas City. It's in Leawood, Kansas, outside of Kansas City, Church of the Resurrection, and they'll have 5 services, and each one of those services is kind of geared to a different age of people or a different group of people. So you'll have contemporary music in one service, you'll have traditional music in another service, and so on. And they even have a big band that will play music for them. So that's an advantage they have. They bring in a lot of people. But your typical church in Lindsborg, Kansas, for instance, isn't going to have anything like that, and so we're kind of limited in that way also. I think that's all I've got for right now, but
Okay. I see. Yes. I think what you said is very correct. Is also good to make the church attractive, but if we go to the extent of making it unbiblical, then even if people come, then if they don't become the disciple of Christ, I don't think they are going to stay long in the church either. So what you said is, I think, totally correct. We have to see.
And one other thing I'd like to share with you. I've been going to different churches and preaching at them, and just about all of them have this in common. You go and there maybe 30 or 40 people in attendance. You go and those in attendance are in their 70s or their 80s. You don't see young people. I've gone to these churches and I look out across the congregation and I think, unless something really changes, this church won't be here in 10 years. Everyone will have died off. They're not bringing in youth. They're not bringing in younger adults to take their place. So that's a big problem we have there too. How do we? You want to make the service attractive, but you have to remember that you're there to worship, and you're there to worship God. You're there to worship Jesus Christ. You're not there to worship some pop star. So how do we mold those together? How do we make that work? And we're trying to figure it out. We don't have the answer, not yet anyway.
We don't have the answer, not yet. That is very true. And Reverend Peterson, as you just said, what comes into my mind is that what about parental role in this regard? For example, every children have their parents, and every adults also have their parents. But those people who attend churches are like over their 70, 60 years old, so which mean the youngsters are not at all going to the church, and they are not attending the church. So do their parents ask them, or at least ask them to go to church at all? Our parents' responsibility is minimized over here. So how is that?
I don't know if parents are asking their children to go to church. My children, I have two sons, and their wives do not attend church. And I've talked to them about it, but they've chosen not to. My daughter and her husband and my granddaughter do attend the church in Lindsborg, and the reason that they decided to attend church after not having done that for many years is because of their daughter. They want their daughter brought up in church. Well, the same thing happened to my wife and I many years ago. We attended church for our children. We wanted them to be raised in the church. And I think that's one way of getting to young adults is to encourage them to bring their children to church. A lot of times when that happens, why the parents find that there's something there for them as well.
I see. And Uncle Tom, do you want to add something on that?
Well, our society seems to be trying to let the young people decide too much for themselves. And so when I was growing up, there was no question. We went to church all the time. We were every Sunday and many times during the week. That was our home, being in church, and we didn't question about that. My parents didn't say, "Would you like to go to church today?" It was, that's what we do on Sunday. And so I think that we're giving the young people too much choice, and maybe they're not at the age where they can decide those kinds of things themselves. But I was talking to a friend a few days ago. She goes to a church, a Lutheran church, and it's a big, big church in downtown in a pretty big city. And she said they don't have any Sunday school, no Sunday school. And how can the children learn about religion if they don't have any Sunday school? And if you don't have any children in the worship service, how can they learn the elements of their faith? There's no way. And so it's something that won't continue on. It's going to be very, very hard. And so you have a generation of children who have never been in church. And they're starting to come to college now. And when they have a question, do you have a church connection? They put none. And so that's becoming almost a majority now of people in their 20s, 30s who have never had any church connection. So it's surprising to me.
That is very true and very sad also. And thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that information. And we are going to.
Could I add just one thing to what Tom was saying?
Sure, please.
He was talking about the college students that select none for their church affiliation, and that is something. In fact, it's actually called that there are the nuns, and we're not talking Catholic nuns. We're talking about people that are none in their religion, and that's one of the fastest growing segments of our population, and we just call them the nuns, and so that's a vital group right there to reach out to and try to, but they've just decided religion is not part of their life. They're not going to do it. The nuns.
I see. So there in America, you call them the nuns, the nun group.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
N-O-N-E-S, not N-U-N-S. Nuns.
I got it.
N-O-N-E-S, yeah. Mm-hmm.
That is so interesting. Thank you so much. And we are going to go into details about the democracy and politics things and their role in the decline of church attendance a little later on. But for now, I would like to go into another question. Here we have a peculiar word to describe American culture, that is workaholic. I think they called it workaholic. So the workaholic cultures is where the entire population is engaged or occupied with works 24/7, right? So what is the role of economic modernizations or the workaholic culture in the declines of church attendance in America? For example, if everybody is fully engaged in work 24/7, then it's very difficult to blame them for not going to church. So the decline in church attendance in America has something to do with their workaholic culture. That is the next discussion. I think Uncle Tom, you can start with this.
Well, that's something that makes me very angry in some ways, because I don't agree. My grandparents worked really, really, really hard all the time. My parents worked really hard all the time. They were farmers and they were strong, and they had, from sunrise to sunset, they were working. But church was the important thing in their lives. And so we wouldn't work on Sunday. There were certain things maybe we could do, but we had the focus on our church. And of course, school and all of these other activities, but church was number one in priority. So I don't think that that is something that is stopping people now. I think that they have other options and they watch each other. People who are 20 and 30 years old with their children, they watch their neighbors, and their neighbors aren't going to church, and the children. Why do I want to go to church? There are no kids there, and so I think that more than anything, it's that kind of situation. Our priorities have changed very quickly.
I see. I see. Reverend Peterson, I think you can continue with that. I think you have a lot of inputs on that.
Well, it's so true that that people just do not attend church. They have a lot of options there. People haven't been raised the way that Tom and I were raised. For some reason or another, we got very lax in church attendance or having our kids attend church, having kids attend church with their parents. And, and kids are kids, if they can make that choice for themselves, they're going to say, well, I'll just stay home. I don't want to go to church, but that's one of the things that my wife and I did as we were raising our children. They had to go to church. We didn't give them a choice. If they had friends that stayed overnight, well, those friends had to go to church too. But that, it's just not the case anymore in our world, in our country. I had in one of my churches, I had an old gentleman there who was a farmer, and he would get so upset with people because other farmers would say, well, I can't go to church. I've got to be out in the field. And he said, I always go to church. And he did. He was very faithful. And he said those people could make the time to do what they needed to do on their farm, and still be able to go to church. But he was kind of a dinosaur. He was one of the last of his kind, I think, because most people give them that choice, they're going to make the choice to be out making hay. So, and that's been one of the problems with you talk about workaholics. Why there are a lot of workaholics. I mean, there are people that work 24/7. And one of their excuses for not attending church is, well, I've worked all week. I only have one day that I can sleep in. So they sleep in instead of going to church. And that's just kind of the mindset of a lot of people.
I see. I see. As there's a saying, if there's a will, there's a way. Then the
Right.
will part is, I think, the major problem out here. As I listen to your speech, thank you so much for that information. And moving forward, in these recent years, we heard many news about sexual abuses by Christian leaders in many churches and denominations in the Western countries as well, even among the evangelical denomination. So my question is, do unbiblical teachings and ungodly behaviors of pastors and preachers have any role to play in the decline of church attendance in the Western countries? For example, if your pastors is indulging in sexual affair, then it is very reasonable for you or for me to decide not to go to my church anymore. likewise, are people deciding not to go to church because of the behaviors of their pastors or the preachers out there in the country. So, Reverend Peterson, can you please start with that?
Well, it's a big problem. It's been a big problem in the Catholic Church in America, where many priests have had to be defrocked because of it's a lot of times it's with children that they have in the church. In the Methodist Church, it's been a problem. We have a program called Safe and Sacred Training, and all pastors have to go through that. Anybody that's involved with working with youth or disabled adults have to go through Safe and Sacred Training, which is training that to explain to people what the issues are, and what they have to do to avoid having these relationships with people that they shouldn't have relationships with. So it is a big problem. People, of course, as you say, they see it and they know it's wrong, and they say, why should I go to a church where their pastor was doing these things? So I don't personally know anyone that has had an issue with this, but I have sure seen a lot of examples of it. A pastor needs to place himself up at the very top in faith, in belief, in their practices, what they say and what they do. It's not just sexual things, it's in your language. Or there was a pastor in our town several years ago that was an alcoholic. He had to leave his position as being a pastor because of that. Well, people saw that. They said, why would I attend that church? Their pastor is an alcoholic. So it happens. These types of things happen in every town, every city in America, and I'm sure it's had quite a bit to do with the decline in our church attendance.
I see. Thank you so much. And Uncle Tom, do you have something to add on that?
Well, there's no question that what happened in the Catholic Church had a great influence in the decline, especially in the Catholic Church, but also Protestants saw what was happening. And on TV shows, comedy shows, people would joke about priests and their behavior and pastors and their behavior. When I was growing up, a pastor was a leader in the community. And now I'm not sure if they are thought of as great leaders in the community. And there are many people who make jokes about them. And so that is another huge change. So I'm not sure how I answer that question. We always have to say pastors are people too. They have all kinds of things that they are dealing with. I do read that often many pastors are leaving the ministry in the United States. Many are leaving because it's a hard job and they don't have respect and they don't have friends. And so many people are leaving. And this is a big problem. There is a great shortage of pastors in the United States right now. And many churches are closing. You're right. When at the beginning you said that 4,000 churches or something like that. I've heard thousands. thousands of churches are closing every day.
Hmm.
But that is something that is very interesting as I'm working with Chin people and I've seen other ethnic groups. You have these beautiful, beautiful churches that are in the suburbs, and the churches die, and here are all these Chin people or Karen people or other ethnic groups that come in and buy those churches. They don't have to build the buildings because the churches are empty, and so they can uh, be in those areas. So it's very lucky for the Chin people that they can move into those churches and have those facilities that are very good. But of course, it's sad because there had to be a sacrifice. And the sacrifice was that the church building only had 20 people coming to church, and they were all 80 years old, and they said, we have to close. And then the Chin people come in, and they've got everything set up for them. And I'm jealous when I go to a Chin worship service because I see everything is full. The church building is full, and they have young people, and they have wonderful music, and the worship service lasts 2.5 hours. And no one complains, and it's a joyful feeling. It feels like old time church to me, and like I say, I'm jealous of what people have. And another thing that I'll have to say about Chin people, I have been so impressed at their knowledge of the scripture and the dedication and the prayer. And all of these things are just amazing to me. And I think about our American young people. They don't know any scripture by heart, and they don't have Sunday school. They don't know how to pray. Uh, I think that you Chin people have such a great thing going for you, and I'm so envious of what the Chin people have, and so I'll be talking more about that later.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. As you have been engaging with our Chin people, you really have good knowledge about us. Thank you so much for what you just said. That is a blessing for us. And going forward, I would like to talk a little more about the cultural changes, and especially the church culture, the leadership part. As I mentioned earlier, human culture is rapidly changing, but there are so many church leaders who have no idea of how to adapt with the changing culture. So they are thus confused and incompetent, and eventually become ineffective in the church. So they cannot manage the church, especially the young generation. So I think that has a role to play in the decline of church attendance as well. So I just would like to particularly ask about the ineffective leadership in the church and their role in the decline of church attendance in America. How much that affect? I think Reverend Peterson, you can answer that.
Well, okay, with the cultural changes in our world, and that, let's face it, there's change all the time. A pastor comes out of seminary and he goes to a church and leads his church, and he might be up to date culturally at that time, but we're human, and we tend to maybe not keep up with those changes. So the pastor of a church with 70 and 80-year-olds, well, he's kind of caught up in a past culture, and that might be part of the reason why young adults and youth have quit coming, because they don't feel like they're a part of the culture of that church. Now, I know in the United Methodist Church, which I came from, there are seminars and there are gatherings of pastors to learn about these things, and sometimes they do. Sometimes they learn, but it doesn't seem to be too long before culture catches up and passes by again. So I do think we do have a problem with that. Now we have a lot of our bigger churches, higher attendance churches, why they're a lot better about keeping up with those cultural changes. But sometimes a small church in a small town is not so good about doing that, and we see that in our attendance and who is coming to church and who is not. So and our our young people, Tom spoke earlier about people saying I'm a spiritual person. Well, I think we have a lot of people out there who, instead of trying to go to a church that is behind culturally, they'll just say, well, I'm a spiritual person and I don't need that. So, we, boy, I'm seeing where we have a lot of things that we need to address in the church in America, and that's one of them.
Great. Thank you so much. Great answer. And just before Uncle Tom continue, I just want to add another perspective. That is what you just mentioned is regarding mega church and small church. As I read about churches in the Western countries, I learned that mega churches are growing and growing years after years, and small churches are dying and dying years after years. So when I just think, what comes into my mind is a difference in leadership styles, or the difference in the level of effectiveness in the leadership system. So do you think that leadership styles or leadership effectiveness level play a role in the mega church growing even more and smaller churches dying years after years? I think Uncle Tom, you can add on that as well.
Well, I have read that even mega churches are declining. They're a little bit slower than the main denominations, but I think we're going to see that decline too. And so is it preaching style or is it something else? I'm not sure. I come from a denominational background, and so I really haven't had too much experience with megachurches, but I do know that people are starting to leave those also. Maybe Pastor Peterson can talk about
could I? Yeah, I'd like to add a little to that. In the decline of the church in America, yes, mega churches are declining, but they have so many people, it's kind of hard to tell they're declining. But one of the things that the mega church will have, and a lot of churches, it doesn't have to be a mega church, is just the welcoming that people have when they come through the doors of the church. You go to maybe some churches and nobody says anything to you. Well, that doesn't make you feel very welcome. A lot of these larger churches, they'll have an area where you can come in before the service and just sit and visit and drink a cup of coffee and have a donut, and people are there. Church members are there welcoming them as they walk in the door, and letting them know where certain things are. And, I think that's part of it. If you're not a welcoming church, people will, the people that are going to be there are the people that are always there. But if you put some effort into having somebody open the door for you, direct you to a place where you can sit and have a cup of coffee, and your family can feel welcome in that way. And then the worship starts after that. Worship is so important. I mean, we've got to have that. We've got to have a God-filled worship service. But the part before that and also after, why you have to make people feel like you're glad to see them there. And that's what we see with mega churches. That's what we see with a lot of churches.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And just one short question in related to the church. Uncle Tom earlier mentioned to me that in America, pastoral job is considered to be the lowest job. And if you're a pastor, then people think that you're taking the lowest job in America. So why are people considering pastor as the lowest job that they wouldn't choose? Is that because of the low salary, or is that because of the hectics, or a kind of busy schedules? Or what would be the main reason why people in the Western country consider pastor job as lower class of job?
Pastor should answer that. Pastor Peterson should answer that.
Okay, yeah.
Well, for one thing, and I think has been mentioned earlier, is that a pastor doesn't have the position of power that they used to have. And, the pastor isn't someone that sits on the city council and helps, lead things there. It's just been a gradual thing over the years that has happened. And I think we've allowed that to happen, and maybe we shouldn't have allowed that. But at any rate, pay might have something to do with it. In certain denominations, the pay is pretty good, and I know pastors that are pastors who are doing very well. But normally, why these smaller churches can't afford to pay a high salary. And a lot of times a pastor will be there and will take less money just because the church can't afford to pay more money. We have elders who are seminary educated people who demand the higher wage. Well, they work in larger cities with larger churches. Other pastors in small communities, why they have to take less income. So that affects a lot of things. I know here in our community, there have been churches that went without a pastor for maybe 2 or 3 years, and they had a lay person filling in, or else they'd have another pastor from another community come in and preach for them. So it's just hard. It's hard to find a pastor in a smaller community to work for the wage that they really should have. So that's all part of it. But it's just been a kind of a decline in the church in our society, where the pastor doesn't have what I call the power that he once had or she once had.
Very
Tom,
true.
Oops, sorry.
What were you going to say, Pastor? Were you
I
talking to
just
me?
wondered, if you had anything to add to what I just said.
No, I don't have anything to add.
Yeah.
I think that you expressed that very well.
As Pastor Job is like, even though we call him a leader, he's a servant leader, so he doesn't have any authority and power. That is what people today really hate. So I really can connect it. I can really understand that.
I like what you said, servant leader, because that's what a pastor should be. And but you don't have too much power when you're a servant, right? But
Exactly.
a servant leader. Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you so much. And as we have been taking quite a long time, so we will move towards the application part, the chin part.
Yes.
But I think Uncle Tom will enjoy talking about this.
Yes.
Just as I mentioned earlier, the churches are dying and church attendance are dropping down there in the America and all the Western countries as a whole. So how could the Chin Christians avoid this kind of church decline and church closures as the Americans people are facing today? And what are the dangers that we have to take notice of today? And what are the hope that we can cling on today? So that is the kind of applications of what we have been talking tonight. And I think I'll call Uncle Tom first, and Reverend Peterson will continue with that.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to talk about dangers because as far as I'm concerned, I think what I have seen from the Chin perspective, there is a very, very positive feeling going on in the Chin community. This has been a great inspiration for me in these 2 years to have met incredibly strong Christians and going to their worship services. I've only gone a couple times, but I have so many pastor friends who have such deep, deep faith. And so I think that the Chin people are doing so many right things. The problem that I see is, well, you know that in the old Chin stories from long ago, the Chin people came out of the cave, right? Right. And so I always say, Chin people can't live in the caves anymore. If they're in Australia, if they're in Norway, if they're in the United States or around the world, they need to be mixing up with the other people. I think the Chin people can help us, American churches. I think that it is a necessity now. And what I always say is 130 years ago, you sent missionaries to Burma, to Hakka or Tidim or wherever. And now it's the turn of the Chin people who are here in these countries now. And I'll speak for the United States. The number of churches in Kansas City that are Chin churches are incredible number. Thousands of people. But you can't live to yourself. You have to be mixing up with the culture. And people say, oh, well, I don't speak English. That's not the problem. That's one of the problems. But I think that if you have a desire to help us out we are at a danger zone now. We need to have the help from the Chin people. And so that is what I really say is important. And my friend Peter will often say, well, give us some examples. Tell us how to do this. Be concrete. And I say, I have no idea how it will happen. The first thing that I think about is prayer. I think that the Chin people need to seriously talk about how and pray about how are we going to reach out to our American brothers and sisters. That's one of the things. And then allow the Holy Spirit to help figure this all out and have a willingness to reach out to us. And can it happen? Well, I think so. And there is one example that I have, and this is a book, which is also a movie. It's called All Saints. And I'm sure that many people who are watching today know this movie or they know the book. The situation was that there was a church down in Tennessee. This is a true story in the state of Tennessee. And the priest that was called there was his job was to close it down because it was only a handful of old people that were there. And so his bishop asked him to close the place. And suddenly there were some Karen refugees that showed up. And they said, we're Anglican too. Can we come to your church? And it was a shock. They didn't know that the Karen people were working nearby at a chicken factory. And suddenly, all of these Karen people came. And it was a shock for the white people to suddenly have all of these people around. But they decided, let's try to work together. And so they gave the land of the church to the Karen people to raise crops, to have vegetables, to make it into a farm. And then they could use the money from that to help pay for the church. And so it's a community that has come together. So what I want to say to all of the Chin people, now that I have an audience, is remember what the Bible says about that we are one body in Christ. We are not Jews and Gentiles. We are not Chin and white. We are one body. We have to come back to thinking about that. And so, do you have the page that I gave you about the quote from this book? If you could put that up.
I have. I will try to put it up.
I'd like to share that with everybody because this is something that made me almost cry.
Okay, you can continue with your talk, and in the manual I will download it and put it up.
Okay, so I encourage everyone to watch this movie because it was well made, and also it shows how that everyone was hesitant at the beginning. All of the white people were very suspicious of these people who came in and didn't speak English. And then the Karen people, they didn't understand the white people around them and maybe didn't even trust the priest. But they said, we've got to work together. So are you able to find the page?
I got it. I got it. I will put it up.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
There we are. And so I'd like everyone to read along with this, not out loud, but you can see that this is what one of the priests later wrote about this in the book. I have been asked more than once what I feel is the message of all saints, and that's the name of the congregation, the message of all saints for the church across North America. Made a mistake there, America, and even around the world. All Saints was once a predominantly white, fairly wealthy church looking for its mission. Today, it certainly isn't a white church, and it's not a wealthy church. Many of our members are struggling. They are dealing with psychological, physical, and financial hardships. But it is also a church that is working together the way a church ought to be. It is a church that has found its mission to be present in the community and help in any way God opens doors. Jesus doesn't call people just to learn biblical theology, but into community as part of a fellowship, a family. To me, All Saints is where I've personally seen this lived out more than anywhere I've been in church. In fact, I would say that the Karen welcomed us into their family, not the other way around. So I think that that is the message that I would like to have. And the challenge that I have, Eugene people have such a wonderful, wonderful knowledge of Christianity that was brought to you by some great missionaries. Now, this is your opportunity to help in Norway or Australia or the United States or anywhere you're at, to come out of the caves and find ways that we can say to each other, look, you are my brother. You are my sister. Let's work together. And I think that that's where it's going to be. If you brought some of these, let's say white people, okay, let's use that. If you brought them into your community and they saw what you're doing, maybe that would be a way of helping with this decline situation. You can tell us what we need to do from your point of view. Okay, that's what I wanted to say. That's my sermon. So,
that
Pastor
is
Peter,
that is great. That is challenging for us. And just before Reverend Peterson continue with his answer, I just want to add one more quick question on that. As Uncle Tom said, it is a good opportunity for we, the Chin people, the Chin Christian, to be missionaries in the American right now. Yes. But nobody know how, and Uncle Tom gave us a little clue on what we can do there. And I want Reverend Peterson to give us more ideas of how to do more as missionaries there in Americans for our Chin people. Please, you can continue.
I think that Tom really hit on this. Something that's very important is that you need to get out there. You need to be a part of the community. You need to go and see people and visit with them, and because it's kind of the same way with the pastor. I put myself in this position when I've gone into a church. I have been the one that goes and talks to people one-on-one, who goes and visits with people. It doesn't happen the other way around. People don't come to the pastor necessarily, but it is the pastor that goes and talks to people. And I think I think that's key for the Chin people. When they go into the community, they need to become a part of that community. You know, and also, you know, and we've talked about it, is one of the big problems that we've had in America was with young people attending church. So I think that's important for all of you, all the Chin in your churches, to make sure that your young people stay engaged. You know, maybe not give them the choice not to go to church, but say, listen, you're going to go to church. You know, your parents need to say that to their kids, because I believe we have really lost a lot of young people because we've allowed them to do what they want to do. And we, you know, we really need to be finding ways to make it so the young people want to go also. So, you know, there's it's kind of a two-edged sword. You have to make sure that they go, but make sure that they want to go. So, and I would say for your young people, for the young Chin people, that's important. You need to have that. So, I can't think of anything else right off the top of my head right now, but I think those are important things.
I think what you just said are very, very important steps for us to take. For example, here in India, like, to be missionary is a little challenging because there are dangers attached to doing evangelism here, because there are a lot of people who hate Christianity. So there are physical danger attached to that. But in America, there is no physical danger attached to doing evangelism, telling people about Jesus Christ. So I think that is something all of us can do very easily with nothing to worry about our security also. So what you just said is very important. Thank you so much. And the Chin people have been living in the US for quite a long time now, more than 2 decades. Yes. So as Americans, as the host, as American yourself, how do you evaluate them? How do you observe them? Do you think that they are indifferent as a whole, or like they are trying to group among themselves only so far? So far, that so far is very long, actually, almost 2 decades, more than 2 decades, in fact. So by now, there should be something going out from their community, our community. But how do you see as American, to be frank, right? So because that will give us how to change ourselves.
Well, may I start?
Sure, sure.
I tell all of the Chin people, when my great-grandparents came to the United States in 1870 something, 1879, they didn't have anything. They weren't leaving Sweden because of a coup or a military aggression or those kinds of things, but they came because they had nothing. And so when they came, they didn't speak English. They had to learn English. And of course, they had worship in Swedish for a long time, but they had their community, and it was a Swedish-speaking community, and they ate Swedish food, and they did those kinds of things. Little by little, they became Americans. And so that's one of the things Chin people need to realize where they are. And you can't live 24 hours a day speaking only Lai or whatever language, whatever dialect you speak. You have to learn a little bit about where you are. But like I said, the main thing that I say today is every day when you go out and you're seeing all of these other people, say, we are the same as they are. We are children of God, all of us. And for Christians, we're one body in Christ. It doesn't make any difference what language we speak, or what color skin we have, or where we have come from. That isn't important. We have something together. And so, Pastor Beek, you are my brother, whether you like it or not. We have a connection. And I have a connection with Pastor Peterson, and I have a connection with my pastor who comes from Nigeria. I don't think about any differences. We are working in the same way because we are a family. Pastor Peterson, do you want to say something about that?
Well, I think also we Americans, a lot of times we don't notice things that we should. In our community, we didn't even know anything about Myanmar. We didn't know anything about the Chin people. Tom has helped open a lot of eyes there for people in our community, but and I haven't I haven't even known, except for the young man who worked at the food market making sushi. I got to know him a little bit, but I just think we Americans, we kind of have a tendency sometimes to ignore what's right there, and that's what has happened with us. Now, the Chin have been in America for 2 decades, but we haven't seen any here, so except for two. So I think it's a matter of awareness. People have to be made aware. I know Tom has done a great job of helping people become aware, but a lot of times we white people just don't want to see anything else. So that's kind of how it is for us in small communities in America. In larger communities, you'll have the thousands of Chin, like for instance, that live in Kansas City or Indianapolis or Dallas or places like that. We just need to care, and we need to be aware. A couple of things there. And as Christians, followers of Jesus Christ, we should want to do that.
Exactly. That is very true. Thank you so much. And the Chin people who live in America, especially the Chin Christians who live in America, are in a groups. Especially churches are in fellowship, and the greatest of all the groups is called CBC USA. It means Chin Baptist Churches USA. Uncle Tom will know it very well. So this CBC USA has been doing great mission work in Myanmar. They sent hundreds of missionaries there. They spent like thousands and thousands of dollars for the mission work there. But starting this year, the CBC USA mission department is planning to send missionaries to India. And they started with 100 missionaries. and they have sent around, I think, 70 missionaries so far this year, and they are planning to increase it to 100 by the end of the year. And after India, they are planning to send missionaries to other countries like Laos, Cambodia, or eventually to the Europe, and eventually also to the US. So there is a kind of seed started to grow within us. That is how I feel. So we will need your prayer support and your advice as well. In the near future, maybe if the Lord opened the door for us, we the Chin people may send missionaries to the American people and the Europe people and to the Asian countries as well. So that is our prayer, and we need your prayer support as well for that. And I think we are leading toward what Uncle Tom envisioned for the future of the Chin Christians. Thank you so much.
Yes.
So I have been taking a lot of your time. So for conclusion, I want you to give the final remarks. Maybe you want to add up something, or you want to bring about new ideas, whatever it is. I think Reverend Peterson, you can start.
Well, I just want to thank you for inviting me to this session today, and I really appreciate it. I think we have a lot of work to do ahead of us in our country as far as kind of reigniting, get that fire going again, have the Holy Spirit lead us in coming to know Jesus Christ all over again, and to worship the one God. I think the things that we've talked about today are very relevant to what we need to do, what you need to do in keeping the church strong and alive. And we haven't failed. I won't say that we have failed, but we have fallen back, and we need to in our country, around the world, need to get reignited for Christ. One thing that I've talked about some is the decline in Europe and in America of the Christian faith, but what encourages me is looking to the African countries and how on fire they are and growing all the time, and also for people of your region, people in Southeast Asia, people of the Philippines, for the growth that they are experiencing. And you know, we can look to them for encouragement and hopefully finding what we need to find to get things going again for Christ. And so again, thank you and appreciate you, and God bless you.
Thank you so much, Uncle Tom.
Well, I'd say you asked for prayers, and you said that someday that you will be sending missionaries. I would say not someday, it's today.
Amen.
Right? It's
Amen.
today. And all we have to do is walk down the street. If we live in Kansas City or Indianapolis or Dallas, all we have to do is walk down the street. That's where we start. And it doesn't cost anything. And so the word that I would have is be strong and courageous, right? That everyone has a missionary task to do. And if you're not, then wake up. And so that's what I would say to the Chin people. Wake up and look around. And my life has been changed very much. It's been 2 years exactly since I met my first Chin person. And my life is totally different. And it's such a blessing because I'm an old man. Well, I'm the same age as Pastor Peterson, and he's not old, but I'm older. Right? And so it's been such a blessing these last 2 years to know some Chin people. And my friend Peter, who's studying at Princeton, he is a brother to me. I love him completely. He is the best person that I know. And then I got to meet Dr. Pumsa Mang, who came to Lindsborg. And what a great scholar he is, and what a lovely man he is. And to have friends like this,
Mm.
and you also,
Mm.
it's been such a huge blessing in my life. And so I just want to say thank you for all that you have done. So anyway, that's where I want to end.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. This is our very first theology talk in English. So I hope God will help us to continue with the same in the near future or sometime in the future. So I'm very blessed by your informative and insightful speeches tonight. I learned a lot, and I am so inspired by two of you. And I am very, very honored to have the opportunity to have this kind of insightful and informative and useful information sharing with 70 years plus people. And you speak a lot. Yeah, you are so rich in experiences. You have been everywhere across the world. So your one words means a lot for us. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for whatever you have shared with us tonight. And I also would like to say thank you to all our online audiences, and especially those people who share our live stream video tonight. That is helping us. You are helping us to spread the words. So thank you so much. So
now, excuse me, will this be on YouTube now also, that people can see this?
I will put in the YouTube as well. Right now is on Facebook Live, and
Okay.
I'll take it and upload it on the YouTube as well, and I'll share the YouTube link with you.
Many people have asked me about how they can see it.
Sure.
So
Sure. We will do that. We'll do that. So as we have taken quite a long time, we are going to stop over here and see you soon. Thank you so much. God bless you all.
God bless.
Thank you. God bless. Bye-bye.
Thank you.